The Eagles' next move could be coming soon, and it may catch you by surprise, as despite things slowing down in the offseason, a lot of dominoes still have yet to fall for the Birds, including a potential Dallas Goedert trade, Jordan Davis's pending 5th-year option or extension, and some possible other exciting free agent additions. And we got some updates on all those things, so in this video, I'll break it all down. Plus, I'll talk about the biggest domino of all that'll fall for the Eagles next offseason regarding Jalen Carter, as we just got an interesting update there as well. So again, we're going to talk about that and all the other latest Eagles news starting right now. Things are officially starting to cool off for the Philadelphia Eagles, as with the craze of free agency, trade season, and just all the wild rumors starting to die down a bit, it is officially that time of the offseason in Philadelphia. However, it's often when you least expect it that Eagles GM Howie Roseman goes out and makes a big move. I mean, heck, we just saw it on day 2 of the legal tampering period this year when Howie shocked everybody and traded starting safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Texans in what was a controversial move among fans, to say the least. Or what about off seasons past, as we've seen Howie make plenty of significant moves in the later stages of free agency, the NFL draft, and even in the later spring and summer months. I mean, a few recent examples that pop into my head would be the addition of Mekhi Becton last offseason, as they acquired him just after the NFL draft, and he of course went on to start at right guard and perform very well for your Super Bowl champion Eagles. Or what about the extensions of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith last offseason just before the NFL draft? And then go back to the previous offseason, where the Birds traded for DeAndre Swift during the draft, and he then went on to rush for over 1,000 yards in his sole season in Philly. Or what about the 2022 offseason, when the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown during the draft, signed James Bradberry in the middle of May, and traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson right before the start of the regular season. So the point is, just because things have quieted down a bit in the offseason, that does not mean that Howie Roseman isn't going to make any significant moves. Now, do I expect a huge move to acquire a star player or a big name? No, not exactly, but you never really do know what Howie Roseman's going to do. And in terms of their next move, obviously, everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen with Dallas Goedert, as of course, there's been plenty of reports that the 30-year-old tight end could be a trade candidate for the Eagles this offseason, with him, of course, getting up there in age, with him having just 1 year left on his deal with no guaranteed money, and with how much getting off Goedert's contract now would save the Birds over the next few seasons. Now, what complicates things here is, one, the dead money, as the Eagles would have to eat about an $11 million dead cap hit if they traded Goedert right now, and also, 2, Goedert's still really good and an important part of both the Birds' pass and run game, and 3, the Birds don't have a clear-cut replacement at tight end, and even if they do draft somebody, there is no guarantee that they'd be ready to start and produce immediately. However, I've seen some people suggest that one of the Eagles' most recent free agent departures could mean that Goedert's exit from Philly is coming very soon. And of course, I'm talking about now former Eagles corner Avonte Maddox signing a 1-year deal with the Lions. As if you don't know, Maddox and Goedert have been best friends since being drafted together in 2018, and even lived together for a large portion of their time in Philadelphia. So now that Maddox is gone, some people have speculated that that's a sign that Goedert is not going to be back either. I personally don't really see it that way, and I think the Eagles probably just figured it was about time to move on from Maddox, and their decision on Goedert will have no correlation to that whatsoever. But, that doesn't mean that Goedert's not gone, so we'll have to wait and see. Personally, I'm still hoping the Eagles can at least find a way to do a 1-year restructure with Goedert. That way, they can keep him in Philly for just 1 more year, he can find his replacement in the draft and have him learn behind Goedert for a season before he eventually takes over next season after Goedert's contract expires. But, we'll see what happens. Now, as far as the Eagles' next move in free agency goes, though, there's still a couple positions, mainly on defense, where it would make a lot of sense for the Birds to add some depth, or maybe even a starter at the safety position if the Eagles aren't fully confident in Sidney Brown and they don't really want to draft somebody early. And of course, I just talked about Justin Simmons in my last video and the chances of him signing in Philly, which are still very real, but there's still a few other guys that are available at that position that could be intriguing options as well, such as Rayshon Jenkins, for example, or maybe a Marcus Williams, who was just released from the Ravens and the Eagles nearly signed back in 2022, or the name I've heard most about in recent days, Julian Blackmon. And he stands out compared to the other names because he is much younger than the other remaining options at just 26 years old, and he's been really solid in his 5 years with the Colts, and particularly in the last 2 seasons, as he's put up over 85 tackles and 3 interceptions in each of the past couple years. Plus, he's also got connections to the Eagles, as he spent time with Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, and Parks Frazier in Indy. So, while he did visit with the Panthers today, if he doesn't end up signing there, then I definitely think he makes a ton of sense for the Eagles as a late free agency target. However, one guy I don't feel the same way about is Stephon Gilmore, as the former All-Pro and former Defensive Player of the Year cornerback has been mentioned as a possible target for Philly in recent days. However, with him being well past his prime at 35 years old, and with the Eagles having Kelee Ringo and supposedly trying to get younger on defense, I just don't see it. I mean, maybe for the right price as a depth piece, Gilmore could maybe be a good addition, but I just don't like the idea of him coming in here and starting when you already got a guy like Ringo who's ready for his opportunity, especially if you're paying him a decent amount of money. So overall, I don't like that idea, but however, a veteran I would like to bring in for a cheap price is defensive lineman Calais Campbell. As with Brandon Graham just retiring, bringing in a guy who's 38 years old, has been a longtime captain, and is trying to chase a ring at the late stages of his career would make a ton of sense for both sides. And what makes it an even better idea for Philly is that Campbell's still playing at a pretty high level. I mean, he just put up over 50 tackles last season along with 5 sacks, and he's had 5 sacks or more in each of the past 3 years, despite all those being played with different teams. So again, I love the idea of Campbell coming to Philly to add both veteran leadership and on-field production on the defensive line, and I'm sure Campbell would love that idea too. So I'd say he's a name to keep your eye on as the offseason moves forward. And something else to keep your eye on over potentially this next month or so is going to be what's the Eagles' decision on defensive tackle Jordan Davis's 5th-year option. As just to give a quick recap, the anchor of the Eagles' D-line is set to enter the final year of his rookie deal in 2025, but that can be extended by picking up his 5th-year option for 2026 before the May 2nd deadline. And that 5th-year option is going to be worth $12.9 million. So will the Eagles do that? Would they consider maybe extending him on a longer-term deal? I don't know, but it's definitely going to be a tough decision for the Eagles to make, especially with all the upcoming extensions that they have to hand out to other guys, and with their limited cap space in general. Now, there actually has been noise surrounding this recently, with PFF writer Bradley Locker writing an article where he went through every 2022 first-round pick and predicted whether their 5th-year option would get picked up or not, and when he got to Jordan Davis, he predicted that the Eagles would actually decline his option, saying, quote, "Philadelphia's deep defensive line was one of the biggest reasons the team hoisted the Lombardi Trophy in February, but Davis wasn't as much of a presence as expected when he was drafted this early. The former Georgia standout hasn't even played 600 snaps in a season, working as more of a rotational pass rusher, but still falling behind Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, and Moro Ojomo. Plus, Davis has been merely solid in getting after the quarterback, turning in a sub 8% pass rush win rate in each of the past 2 years. With the Eagles likely to draft an interior defender early in 2025, that could leave Davis heading into a contract year." Now, I will say that last point about the Eagles potentially drafting somebody on the interior of the defensive line early is definitely an interesting point, but still, I think Locker's overall analysis is missing a big chunk of the story. I mean, he largely focused on how JD isn't a great pass rusher, but he fails to recognize that that's just not his role on this team, and it's not really what the Eagles expect him to do either, as where Davis makes his impact is in the run game, eating up blocks and freeing up space for the linebackers and other defensive linemen to go make plays on the ball carrier. I mean, Davis doesn't put up great numbers, and he probably never will, but he still plays a key role in anchoring the Eagles' run defense. That said, Locker's point about Davis not playing a lot of snaps is very valid and makes you question whether he's worth that $12 million for a season or a long-term extension. So again, it's honestly a really tough decision for the Eagles. I personally don't really have any idea as to what they're going to do, so I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts. I mean, do you think they're going to pick up his 5th-year option? Do you think they might consider extending Jordan Davis? Again, give me all your thoughts down in the comments below. Switching our focus to another defensive tackle though, obviously the biggest extension coming up for the Eagles is going to be for Jalen Carter, as the superstar lineman will be eligible for a new deal next offseason, and everyone knows that he's going to get paid a huge bag to make him probably the highest paid defensive tackle in the entire league. And recently, we got some updates on that in the form of a projection from Greg of the Philly Cover Corner, who actually follows me on Twitter, so shout out to him. But he predicted that due to the trajectory of defensive tackle contracts these past few years, Carter's contract extension will likely pay him over $40 million a season, by far making him the highest paid DT in football over the current leader Chris Jones, who signed a 5-year, $160 million deal just last offseason. And if that is what's going to happen, then that's very well deserved, as he said, quote, "Most view Chris Jones as the best defensive tackle in the league, and he is statistically, but Carter is right there with him. Both face double team rates above 70%, well ahead of the other top contract guys, and both still produce at a silly rate. Carter's first in forced fumbles, batted passes, and tackles for loss, second in hits and hurries, and near 13% win rate and over a 10% pressure rate. And you don't need stats if you just watch him to see how absolutely dominant he is and how much better he makes the line around him. Milton Williams made way more money because of Jalen Carter. While you can argue Jones may be the better player right now, what I don't think you can argue is who will be the more valuable contract. Carter's going to sign his extension at age 25, including his 5th-year option, 5 full years ahead of Chris Jones' massive deal. Yeah, so all very good points there, and Greg actually went into much more detail in his article, including explaining how Carter's 5th-year option would factor into the deal, how the contract would likely be structured, and what percentage of the cap that it would take up, which, by the way, that number is surprisingly not very high, but I'm not going to get into all that here because it'd just be super confusing, so go check out his article. I'll leave a link down in the description. But yeah, I mean, you heard it there. Jalen Carter could get well over $40 million a season on his extension next offseason, and obviously, like I said, it's very well deserved, but also, it should put the Eagles' offseason strategy this year even more in perspective. I mean, think about it. Not only do they have to find a way to afford over $40 million a year for Carter, but they also have to pay plenty of other guys like Cam Jurgens and Nolan Smith over the next couple years. Plus, they already have a bunch of guys being paid big money. So that's why you see a lot of guys leaving, the Eagles making small moves, and ultimately them just trying to clear money off the books so they can afford everything. And that's why a move like a Dallas Goedert trade or maybe a Bryce Huff trade could be next, because it could clear up a lot of money over the next several off seasons. Plus, that's also why signing some of these guys in free agency or figuring out what to do with Jordan Davis could be very tough. So, basically, the Eagles got a lot to figure out over these next few weeks and months. There's still plenty of moves to be made, and we can't forget about the upcoming NFL draft, because things are going to be heating up on that front as well, and they already kind of have. So, if you guys don't want to miss any of my coverage on that, or just anything else that comes out for the Eagles this entire offseason, then make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified instantly when I upload a video or go live. And also, while you're at it, make sure you drop a like as well to show some support, because it really does help me out a ton. See if we can get to at least maybe 600 likes today. And also, leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. What do you think the Eagles' next move will be this offseason? Whether that's a trade, an extension, just again, give me your thoughts down in the comments. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video going over a bunch of different stuff, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.